I'm Martin Gresko, and we're going to continue our basic building blocks of theory. And with our knowledge of half steps and our whole steps, we are now ready to construct the major scale. So let's review. A half step is the distance from one note to the next note with no notes in between. For example, C to C sharp, or from E to F. A whole step is the distance between two notes with only one note in between. For example, E to F sharp, there's one note in between. Also from G to A, there's one note in between. All right, so using this pattern of whole steps and half steps, we can begin to construct major scales. All right, and so the pattern that you need to be aware of is 2 1/2, 3 1/2. What that means is 2 whole steps followed by a half step, 3 whole steps followed by a half step. So we're going to start with C major. We start on middle C, and I said that it was 2 1/2. So from C to D is 1, from D to E is 1. Now I need a half step, so that's from E to F. Now I need 3 1/2. So F to G is 1, G to A is 1, A to B is 1, that's 3. Then I need a half step. So we have a C major scale using this pattern. This pattern holds true for all major scales. Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Notice there are no flats and no sharps, that is black keys, used in forming the C scale. If you've ever wondered how come a certain key, a particular key, has a certain number of sharps or flats, well, that's determined by their occurrence as you construct the scale using this pattern of half steps and whole steps. So the C scale would have a key signature that contains no sharps or flats. And if you'll download the PDF, you can actually look in there and see what a key signature is, what that would look like. A key signature is a set of sharps or flat symbols that are placed together on the staff, usually right after the clef sign, that indicate the home key, the tonic key. In other words, what key is the song or the piece of music in. So key signatures are generally written immediately following the clef sign, like I said, and they're at the beginning of a piece of music. So let's practice a little bit more. We'll take the key of G. We're going to use the same pattern, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. We're going to start on G, and we need a whole, half, a whole, a whole, a whole, and another half. Notice that in the key of G, it requires us to move from E to F sharp because we need that whole step. So, all right, so when you get to that E, we can't play an F. That's a nice bluesy sound, but that's not a major scale. The major scale has to have that half note right there because of the pattern. All right, we're going to see how the arrangement of the key signatures evolves into the circle of fifths, but I'm going to do that in a later video, so let's not get ahead of ourselves. So as we progress, this is going to become clearer and clearer to you, but for now, you only need to focus on how to construct major scales. And as part of the lesson notes, I'm going to include a compendium of all 12 major scales, and I'm going to show you how they look written on the staff, but I'm also going to give you a keyboard diagram of those scales as well. So if you aren't reading music, you don't have to worry about it. We can get to that, but I want you to now hear how the major scale sounds. We're going to do one more major scale, and then I'm going to play with the tones a little bit and show you exactly what that sounds like. All right, so we're going to build one on the key of F now. F, and let's remember our pattern. We have whole, whole, followed by half. Notice that that half takes us to a B flat. This is the B, but we need a half step there. So it's whole, whole, half. Now we need 3 wholes. 1, 2, 3, and then a half step. So that gives us So taking that information, you can start literally on any key of the piano using that pattern of 2 whole steps, a half step, 3 whole steps, and a half step. Any key, doesn't matter. All right, so We'll do one more, and then I promise I'm going to get to how this sounds. All right, so I want to discuss one more thing, though, when we're listening to how the major scale sounds, and as we're forming it, you'll wonder why sometimes I called this note, for example, a B flat. Why didn't I call that an A sharp? Or why did I call this F sharp and not G flat? All right, so here's what you have to know. To build a scale, you need 8 notes, and all of the 8 notes, you're using the notes of the musical alphabet. You have to use them in order, which are A, B, C, D, E, F, G. You can't skip any notes, and you can't use any twice. So if you're going to build an A scale, you've got to go A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. And then we have to use that pattern, so we use A, we need a whole step, takes us to B, we need another whole step, that's going to take us to C sharp. We won't call that D flat. We need a half step, which takes us to D, then we need a whole step, which takes us to E, a whole step, which takes us to F sharp, and then another whole step, which takes us to G sharp, and A. So we fulfilled the rule, we used all the letter names. A, B, some sort of C, D, E, some sort of F, some sort of G, some sort of A. So you have to use all the letter names once. You can't repeat any. And does that make sense? I hope so. It's interesting to note that on the white keys, with the exception of F, all the other keys use sharps. C has no sharps or flats, but D, E, G, A, and B all use sharps. F, you use a flat. And then all of the black keys use flats or sharps, again, depending on what the key signature is. For example, this key could be called F sharp or G flat. So if we call it G flat, A flat, B flat, then we have to call this C flat. We cannot call that a B because we've already used the letter B. B flat, G flat, A flat, B flat, C flat, D flat, E flat, and then we do use F and then G. If we used F sharp, we would have to say F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, then we would use B, then C sharp, D sharp. This time we would call that E sharp because we're in F sharp. We can't call that F. We already are using the letter F, so that has to be an E sharp. So you see the difference? F sharp, A sharp, B sharp. I'm sorry, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, then a B, C sharp, D sharp, E sharp, and then an F sharp. All right. I don't know if that's going to get any clearer or it's going to confuse you even more. Listen, don't panic at this point. As we progress through all of these tutorials, at some point you're going to have a light bulb moment, and I'm going to keep saying this stuff over and over and over again because the entire way that I improvise and play at the piano is all based on what I'm teaching you right now. So if you will learn this stuff, and I know it's not sexy, but if you will learn this stuff, I promise you, I can show you some really cool stuff when it comes to improvising. All right, so let's look at the major scale and how it sounds. If you remember Rodgers and Hammerstein and The Sound of Music, and you had the song Do, a dear, a female dear, ray, a drop of golden sun. And so she sings the entire scale and teaches that to the Von Trapp children. That melody is in your notes, so I want you to take a look at that. And that's just another example of the major scale. In that particular case, she's teaching it using a system called solfege. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Later on, I'm going to show you that I actually use numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, or 8. All right, so, but all in good time, we'll go over all of that. Have you ever heard the song? I know you have. Joy to the World is a Christmas song. All that is a major scale. And so it's going backwards. I'll do it in the key of D, which has 2 sharps, F sharp and C sharp. So it starts at the top. That's That's just the major scale. And while we're in a Christmas mood, I'd like to show you a little bit of the first Noel, and that makes use of the major scale almost entirely, except for when you get to the end. But you start not on the first note of the scale, but on the third note, and then you go down to the first note, and then you go back up. All right, so there you have it. You have the major scale. All right, so you need to practice making these major scales. You need to practice playing them. Again, refer to the compendium of scales that I gave you. And in the next lesson, we're going to make some quantum leaps here. And we're going to start talking about scale tone chords. And that is that we take each note of the scale and we build a chord on it. And we're going to start getting into chord progressions and how songs are formed. And this is, again, basis of everything I do improvisationally. And this will fit whether you're playing rock, pop, jazz, country, gospel, you name it. And you can use this stuff. Anyway, I appreciate you watching. I'll see you next time.